everyone, my name is Adelanda and this is Solarpunking, where we discuss solarpunk ideology, things we can do in our communities to make them better, and ways to build the world that we want to live in. I was a reading rainbow kid, and I also watched PBS every day after school while my granddaddy babysat me and my brother. By the time I was in middle school, I'd read most of the Scholastic Book Fair series, like Encyclopedia Brown, Goosebumps, and the first few Harry Potter books that were popular when I was a kid. I was a big fan of the libraries, and since I lived in a lot of different places, I got to visit a lot of different ones. Even now, I spend a lot of my time every week in the library because it's a quiet spot to get work done and still have decent social interaction. In short, I am a huge supporter of libraries, and I would like to talk about why they've evolved into one of the most solarpunk institutions over centuries of human history.
Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. Having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. Come on inside, we've got everything you need.
Libraries came before solar panels and community gardens, food pantries, and colleges. If you really think about it, human civilization is only really possible because we decided that knowledge and ideas are most powerful when they're shared. The first libraries were declarations that we could build upon a structure of knowledge if we're willing to pool those resources. It should be noted that a lot of the first systemically organized libraries were not open source, though. That is, they were gatekept from the everyday person, and only folks like scribes and scholars were granted access. But although the execution was exclusive, the idea behind the concept of preserved knowledge commons is still pretty groundbreaking. And when implemented in a way that benefits everyone, the idea becomes revolutionary. We have record of people creating archives of clay tablets as early as 2000 BCE in Babylon and Mesopotamia. So while I think it would be nearly impossible to determine what was the first library in human history, most scholars would say that the story begins with the Library of Ashurbanipal in the Assyrian Empire. It was established in the 7th century BCE in the Assyrian capital of Nineveh, which would now be considered northern Iraq. Excavators of the site recovered more than 30,000 clay tablets and fragments, so the original collection may have been significantly larger. The collection included a wide range of genres: myths, epics like the Epic of Gilgamesh, incantations, divination texts, medical texts, legal documents, and astronomical and administrative records. The Library of Ashurbanipal, while exclusive, represents one of the earliest large-scale systemically organized knowledge collections in human history, and the earliest step towards the idea that knowledge should be collected and preserved. Here's a clip talking about Ashurbanipal from a curator from the British Museum, and I'm very sorry that the British Museum was the best source I could find to share with you. I know.
So, Ashurbanipal, when he came to the throne, inherited tablets from his father and grandfather before him, and probably all kings had interesting collections of things, and they revered old documents. This is not in itself a revolutionary approach, but it's the way he prosecuted it which is so remarkable. Whatever he inherited from his own predecessors, he then developed and amplified as extensively as possible. So he did this in various ways. One of them was that he sent agents to go to libraries in the south, in Babylonia, where they had long-running libraries with all the rarities in, and they were supposed to take what they didn't have and bring it to Nineveh so that the chancery scribes could make a perfect copy. Ashurbanipal says sometimes in his colophons, "Unlike all the kings who went before me, I can read tablets from before the flood," which means that he could not only understand contemporary letters and literature and things like Gilgamesh without any difficulty, but also things written a very long time before, because he had studied academically and his people had collected for him all this kind of data.
While Ashurbanipal might be considered the oldest structured library, the Library of Alexandria has to be the most famous. Located in Alexandria, Egypt, the exact date of its founding is somewhat uncertain. According to a source I found on Wikipedia, and I'm saying it like this because I was like 3 sources deep within a source and lost where the original idea came from, the library was probably not built until the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus. I try to be pretty tight with my sources, but this was pretty vague and pretty wild, so the source will be listed as Wikipedia. The library was part of the Musea, which was a research center that held tens of thousands of scrolls. Some estimates are actually a lot higher and suggest that there might have been over 400,000, but again, we're going to rely on the Wikipedia page's estimate. Anyway, the important bit is that the Library of Alexandria collected works from across the Mediterranean and beyond, building the foundation for an accessible, shared knowledge base. The Library of Alexandria also teaches us an important lesson about resilience and decentralization. Here's the clip from Elizabeth Cox and Ted Ed that explains what happens when knowledge bases simply vanish.
2,300 years ago, the rulers of Alexandria set out to fulfill one of humanity's most audacious goals, to collect all the knowledge in the world under one roof. In its prime, the Library of Alexandria housed an unprecedented number of scrolls and attracted some of the Greek world's greatest minds. But by the end of the 5th century CE, the great library had vanished. Many believed it was destroyed in a catastrophic fire. The truth of the library's rise and fall is much more complex. Located in the royal district of the city, the Library of Alexandria may have been built with grand Hellenistic columns, native Egyptian influences, or a unique blend of the two. There are no surviving accounts of its architecture. We do know it had lecture halls, classrooms, and of course, shelves. As soon as the building was complete, Ptolemy I began to fill it with primarily Greek and Egyptian scrolls. He invited scholars to live and study in Alexandria at his expense. The library grew as they contributed their own manuscripts, but the rulers of Alexandria still wanted a copy of every book in the world. Luckily, Alexandria was a hub for ships traveling through the Mediterranean. Ptolemy III instituted a policy requiring any ship that docked in Alexandria to turn over its books for copying. Once the library scribes had duplicated the texts, they kept the originals and sent the copies back to the ships. Hired book hunters also scoured the Mediterranean in search of new texts, and the rulers of Alexandria attempted to quash rivals by ending all exports of the Egyptian papyrus used to make scrolls. These efforts brought hundreds of thousands of books to Alexandria. As the library grew, it became possible to find information on more subjects than ever before, but also much more difficult to find information on any specific subject. Luckily, a scholar named Callimachus of Cyrene set to work on a solution, creating the Pinex, a 120-volume catalogue of the library's contents, the first of its kind. Using the Pinex, others were able to navigate the library's swelling collection. They made some astounding discoveries. 1,600 years before Columbus set sail, Eratosthenes not only realized the Earth was round, but calculated its circumference and diameter within a few miles of their actual size. Heron of Alexandria created the world's first steam engine over 1,000 years before it was finally reinvented during the Industrial Revolution. For about 300 years after its founding, in 283 BCE, the library thrived. But then, in 48 BCE, Julius Caesar laid siege to Alexandria and set the ships in the harbour on fire. For years, scholars believed the library burned as the blaze spread into the city. It's possible the fire destroyed part of the sprawling collection, but we know from ancient writings that scholars continued to visit the library for centuries after the siege.
I had to cut that clip for time, but I definitely recommend checking out the full clip with Elizabeth Cox and Ted. Ashurbanipal's library was knowledge gathered for kings, and Alexandria's was for scholars. But the largest library in the world, the Library of Congress, represents the idea that knowledge should be preserved for everyone. While it didn't start that way, it is now one of this country's greatest achievements and is proof that access is the foundation of progress. For now, at least. The Library of Congress was established in 1800 as an act of Congress to be used as a reference library for legislators, but over the centuries it evolved into both a public national library and a research center. It houses more than 173 million curated items, including books, manuscripts, photographs, and recordings. They are also rapidly digitizing the collection, and over 10 million digital files are accessible. It serves as the de facto National Library of the United States and the global archive of human culture. And it's also part of the World Digital Library Initiative, promoting open global access to rare manuscripts and cultural artifacts to anyone with internet access. Here's a clip from The Great Big Story and Librarian of Congress Carla Hayden that gives an overview of the Library of Congress.
Hello, welcome to the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress is the largest library in the world.
Located in Washington, D.C., this collection of over 160 million items is a vast archive of the history of the United States. There are over 70 special collections that include rare manuscripts, maps, sheet music, and much more.
Hello, I'm Helena Zinkamp, Director for Collections and also Chief of the Prints and Photographs Division. This collection of pictures numbers more than 15 million. Among the rarest pictures in our collection, we have the migrant mother, the iconic woman representing the entire Great Depression. The pictures bring people together. They invite you in to look around and explore worlds that you might never be able to see in person.
Hello, I am Paulette Hazier. I am the Chief of the Geography and Map Division. We have 5.5 million maps, 80,000 atlases, 500 globes. So we have Lewis and Clark's maps, George Washington's maps. We have the first map that shows the name America on it. We're part of the bigger, broader world. And as we look at some of these cartographic evidence of the changes over time, it's a realization that we, as a nation, have changed over time.
Hi, I'm Sue Vita, the Chief of the Music Division. There are about 24 million items in the music collection. We have Stradivari instruments. We have the original Rhapsody in Blue, the original edition of the Star-Spangled Banner. Music tells us more about who we are and tells us about our past and our future.
Hi, my name is Michael North, and I'm Head of Reference and Reader Services in the Rare Book and Special Collections Division at the Library of Congress. This collection holds over 800,000 items. We have everything from medieval manuscripts, early printed books, the libraries of Thomas Jefferson. One of our most famous books is the Gutenberg Bible. It's important to have a record of the past so that we know how we came to be where we are today, both in terms of ideas and in terms of history, politics, art, everything.
Hi, I'm Malia Walker. I'm a reference librarian in the Serial and Government Publications Division. This collection is massive. We have 800,000 reels of microfilm. We have about 7.2 million loose issues of newspapers and approximately 42,000 volumes of bound newspaper pages. We also have about 140,000 issues of comic books. One of the great things about reading newspapers is that you get a sense of what it's like to be an American. You are reading how people lived the history itself.
Collections are our way of adding memory and remembrances. All of the collections give meaning and context to the human experience and the history of culture.
Even if a library isn't the oldest, the most famous, or the largest in the world, every single one holds immeasurable value. Most local libraries are funded by community taxes, while university and research libraries often rely on state or federal grants. When that funding is cut or threatened, it puts the infrastructure of public knowledge itself at risk. Every time we use a library, we're part of a centuries-old experiment in collective knowledge and education. From clay tablets to audiobooks, libraries remind us that sustainable futures are built on connection and equitable access. They're tangible proof that data centers and social progress doesn't have to irreparably damage the environment, and that community is the most renewable resource we've ever had. So, go read a book or something. The end. Thanks for listening to the 20th episode of Solarpunking. If you've enjoyed listening in so far, consider sharing this podcast with your friends and family members that you think would also like to join the movement. Also, consider leaving me a comment to let me know what you liked and didn't like. If you still haven't already, go check out the new website at www.solarpunking.com. I'm adding more resources there as well. If you have excess funds, remember that you can use the resources mentioned in episode 19 to find your local food bank and food pantries and donate. They're going to need it in the upcoming season. And if you don't have excess funds, consider donating your time. Until next week, stay hydrated and motivated. Peace.